My name, to start with, is Jean Louise Kopialki Haskell Stevenson. All those. That's me. I was born February 13, 1925 in Washington, D.C. My mother's name was Ruth Tinsman Kopialki, and my father's name was William Herman Kopialki. Well, I don't remember much about my father at all because my parents were divorced when I was 18 months old, and I never met him as far as I know. He had an affair with some lady and was caught, and my grandparents said to my mother, "You leave that man and bring Jean home and come live with us. That's just dreadful." And so she did, just like that. My mother was Ruth. Well, she was a very pretty lady. She was very good at her job and worked for a commissioner in the FCC for many, many years, and was basically like my older sister. My grandparents were the ones who were sitting in place for mother and father, really.
What can you tell me about your mom when she was a kid?
She had one sister, Helen. I think Helen was always a little bit more playful. She was the younger sister. My mother was always very serious, and as years went by, I began to think she's really scared of everything. She was scared of elevators and earthquakes and snakes and almost anything you could think of. She was pretty much nervous about, and made me very, very aware of the fears that I would encounter all the time, to the point where I thought, when I grow up and I have kids, I'm not going to do any of this. I don't want them to be aware of being afraid of anything. So I was very careful not to do that. So I had no other relatives beyond my grandmother and grandfather.
Okay.
And my grandmother, she was Alice Robinson Tinsman was her married name.
And your grandfather?
And my grandfather was John Fine Tinsman. And my grandfather was a rather jolly man, and he looked a lot like Colonel Sanders. He had a white goatee and mustache, and he wore a Stetson hat and affected a cane. He didn't need a cane, but he swaggered with it. And he was a representative from Muller's macaroni products and traveled around a little bit. My grandfather's story was, which I used to believe until I got older and had a boy of my own and thought, I can't believe this, but he said he ran away from home when he was 8 years old. He was very unhappy at home at that age. He got a bed to sleep in the back of some store where he would sweep the store out every day, and that was his pay for his bed. And I asked somebody, a pediatrician or somebody one day, how could this happen that an 8-year-old could get away with this? He said, well, you've got to realize they didn't have communication in those days. You had a missing kid, the kid was missing unless he came back. I mean, there wasn't any way to communicate to the world, look for this child. And so this was fairly common. But it seemed awfully odd to me. I couldn't picture when my oldest son got to be 8 years old. I thought, I can't picture him managing by himself, but that's what happened.